Hi everyone, and welcome to your second of 3 lessons on the feudal system in medieval Japan, located under the Social Structure tab of the Japan under the Shogun teaching and learning website resource. In our last lesson, we introduced you to the feudal system that existed during medieval Japan. You can see it here. And in this lesson, lesson 2, we're going to compare the feudal systems in medieval Europe and medieval Japan. So your success criteria for this lesson is located here. So by the end of the lesson, you need to know the social groups of people in the feudal systems of medieval Europe and medieval Japan. And you need to be able to, by the end of the lesson, compare the feudal systems of medieval Europe and Japan. So to start off, let's jog our memories on the feudal system in medieval Japan and medieval Europe. So just watch these 2 quick overview videos of the 2 different feudal systems, just to get your memory going. Now, the Europe versus Japan feudal system. So both Europe and Japan had feudal systems during medieval times. This shows us as historians that social systems of using land and loyalty in exchange for protection, power and services was the way societies operated, especially during these times. So we can see we've got the feudal system during Shogunate Japan here, and we've got the feudal system of medieval Europe here. So we can see that not only are they the same shape, but they really have quite a similar structure. So in our last lesson, we went over the feudal system of medieval Japan. Just to quickly have a quick overview of the medieval European feudal system. So the kings gave land to the nobles gave money and land to knights, and then who then gave protection to the peasants. So the peasants gave everyone food and made up 90% of the population. The knights gave loyalty, protection, and service to the nobles, who then used that military service to then return favour to the king, as well as loyalty and taxes. So you can see both feudal systems in the same way that a noble gave a knight power, money, and land. In a similar way, we have the daimyo gives a samurai a place in the social system as well. We also have the nobles who are loyal to the king in exchange for land and loyalty. We also have a similar relationship between the shogun and the daimyo here. So quite similar social structures that we're going to investigate this lesson. So task 1 is questions on comparing the feudal systems in medieval Japan and Europe. So use this document here to answer the questions below. And you can open the document in a tab like so if you want to zoom in a little bit more as well, if you just want to open that one up. So, number 1, who is on top of the Japanese feudal system? We can see that's the emperor. Number 2, who is on top of the European feudal system? We can see that's the king. Who has more power, a king or an emperor, and why? Your answer needs to be 1 sentence long. I'd say a king definitely has more power, just because an emperor was seen as a distant, like, god figure or a religious leader rather than actual political leader, where a king was seen as a political leader. So I'd say king has more power. What would you compare a knight to in the Japanese feudal system? That's easy. So knights were very similar to samurai if we were comparing these feudal systems. Knights had to follow a code called chivalry. What was the code that the samurai had to follow? We can see in this very tiny description here. It's a bit bigger if we go into here. It's a code called Bushido. So Bushido is your answer to number 5. Number 6, why are peasants higher up on the Japanese feudal system? So peasants were more respected. So you could argue that the Japanese feudal system is more based on honour and respect rather than the medieval feudal system. Number 7, who would you compare a daimyo to in the European feudal system? So I would compare certainly a daimyo to a lord, a noble lord in the European feudal system. Number 8, who would you compare a shogun to in the European feudal system? Why? And your answer needs to be 1 sentence long. Again, in your books, I'd actually compare a shogun to a king. They have very similar roles in distributing land and taxes in exchange for loyalty. So I'd say a king and a shogun are very similar. And that's just a testament to how powerful shoguns were during medieval Japan, how much respect and how much power they had as well. Number 9, in medieval Japan, a woman could become a samurai. Could a woman become a knight in medieval Europe? And the answer is no. Women weren't allowed to become knights in medieval Europe. Number 10. Who do you think, would win a fight, a samurai or a knight? I think that's a really good question. I think certainly it depends on what stage of medieval Europe you're talking about, but certainly in the 14s and 1500s of medieval Europe, knights were covered head to toe in armor, even though they were really slow, and katanas were really sharp, the sword used by the samurai. I think a knight would probably win just, but you guys can argue for or against that as well. Number 11 lists 3 similarities between the medieval European feudal system and the medieval Japan feudal system. So I'll leave that one for you guys to do in your books, just comparing what's similar. And then number 12, what's different? So 3 differences between these two systems. So you could say, for instance, peasants aren't on the bottom of the Japanese feudal system compared to the feudal system in Europe, where peasants were on the bottom. You could also say that the Japanese one has more levels because peasants in the European feudal system were technically also merchants and like craftsmen as well. Even though some nobles are actually pretty handy at crafting. Number 3, who has more power, a knight or a samurai? That's a really good question. I'm going to leave 13, 14, and 15 up to you guys to do in your book. So who do you think has more power, a knight or a samurai? So have a look at those descriptions there and see who do you think has more power. And then who has more power, a daimyo or a lord, and why? And number 15, would you rather be a peasant in medieval Europe or medieval Japan, and why? I think that answer's I think I'd rather be a peasant in medieval Japan because I'd be respected a little bit more than, say, medieval Europe. And then just to round off this lesson, guys, if you click on the picture here, it'll take you to a Kahoot you can play with your class as well. So during this lesson, we've compared the feudal systems between medieval Europe and medieval Japan to kind of flesh out some of the key information in the feudal system during medieval Japan. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you for your next lesson on the Japan under the Shoguns. If you like using these resources and want to stay updated to any new websites or any new lessons that are made in existing websites like this one, please go ahead and subscribe. Thank you.